Welcome to The Explainer. So when most of us hear the name Adam Smith, we instantly picture the father of modern economics, right? The ultimate champion of free markets. But the source material we're unpacking today reveals a pretty fascinating twist. Adam Smith wasn't just an economist. He was the brilliant architect of a grand, highly interconnected social machine. He wanted to understand not just how we trade, but how we actually function as social creatures.
All right, let's just dive right in and meet the man who sought to map out human nature, the vast sweep of human history, and the intricate gears of economics as one giant, cohesive mechanism. Smith looked at the world and saw an underlying order, this elegant structure that connected our deepest moral feelings directly to our daily economic struggles. And this brilliant analogy from Smith himself perfectly sets up our journey today. He essentially believed that the real world operates through complex, hidden relationships, and it's the job of the philosopher to build an analytical model, an imaginary machine, to actually understand it. So today we are going to build Smith's imaginary machine piece by piece exactly the way he envisioned it.
Here's the blueprint for the machine we'll be assembling today. First, the grand synthetic system. Second, sympathy and the spectator. Third, the 4 stages of society. Fourth, the division of labor. And finally, value, price, and balance.
Starting off with Section 1, the grand synthetic system. We really have to start with the foundation here, recognizing that Smith's famous economic theories were actually just one single gear in a much larger machine of sociology and psychology.
Moving to Section 2, sympathy and the spectator. Because before humans can ever trade in a marketplace, we first have to figure out how to live together without tearing society apart. A stable society is the absolute prerequisite for a functioning economy.
Smith noticed this huge, fundamental tug-of-war in human nature. On one hand, sure, we're driven by self-interest. We want wealth, we want nice things. But on the other hand, we have this deep-seated fellow feeling. We desperately crave the approval of others. We literally just want to be liked. And that creates a powerful internal tension that demands some sort of control mechanism.
So how do we handle that tension? Well, Smith introduced this amazing concept called the impartial spectator. Think of it as the man within, a great judge of our conduct that we construct in our own minds. This spectator is the critical psychological gear that grants us self-command. It forces us to tone down our selfish passions so that others can actually sympathize with us. It's that internal voice constantly asking, hey, how would a totally neutral bystander view what I'm doing right now? But internal psychology isn't always enough to keep things running smoothly. Smith laid out 2 main pillars of society: beneficence and justice. Beneficence, doing good deeds for others, that's like the beautiful, decorative ornament on a building. But justice? Justice is the structural foundation. Without strictly enforced rules of justice, the whole social edifice simply crumbles right into disorder.
All right, Section 3, 4 stages of society. Let's start adding the historical framework to our machine, tracking humanity's progress from basic survival all the way to complex civilization. Smith argued that humanity evolved step by step through 4 distinct stages: hunting, pasturage, farming, and finally, commerce. And the massive takeaway here, it's that how you earn a living completely dictates your society's laws, property rights, and power dynamics. I mean, the rules required for a tribe of hunters are entirely different from those needed by a group of settled farmers. To really see how this totally transforms human life, just look at the shift from the Agrarian age to the commercial age. In the Agrarian period, wealth was entirely tied up in land, which created this rigid system where the masses were completely dependent on powerful feudal lords just to survive. But as cities grew, something fascinating happened. The desire for shiny manufactured goods slowly dismantled the power of those feudal lords. They literally traded away their immense authority just to buy luxury items. This shifted society into a cash nexus that dramatically expanded personal liberty.
Which brings us to Section 4, the division of labor. Now we get to assemble the moving economic parts from the wealth of nations, starting with how this new commercial society fundamentally restructures our daily work.
You might know this one. Smith famously used the example of a pin factory to explain this. By dividing the super simple task of making a pin into 18 separate specialized steps, productivity just absolutely skyrockets. One worker draws the wire, another straightens it, another cuts it. It creates incredible wealth. But the catch? We become entirely dependent on thousands of other people to survive. Think about it. None of us makes our own smartphones or even bakes our own bread from scratch anymore.
Because we can't produce every single thing we need, we have to trade. And this famous quote absolutely hits the nail on the head. You don't beg the baker for bread out of charity, you appeal to his self-interest by offering him money, which he can then use to buy what he needs. We rely on mutual self-interest to make a specialized world function at all.
And finally, Section 5, Value, Price, and Balance. Let's look at the actual gears of the market to see how this dizzying web of self-interested, specialized exchange manages to balance itself out without anyone actively directing it.
Think about the ultimate paradox of value: water versus a diamond. Water is literally essential for human survival, yet it costs almost nothing. A diamond? Practically useless in everyday life, but it costs an absolute fortune. So why is that? Well, Smith explains that exchange value is driven by scarcity and the psychological toil and trouble required to acquire something, not just its practical usefulness.
When we go out into the marketplace, what we are ultimately exchanging is our toil and trouble. Smith actually saw labor as the ultimate real measure of value. The cash in our pockets? That's really just a tool, a ticket we use to command the goods produced by other people's labor.
But how on earth do these prices stay balanced? Smith noticed two types of prices. You've got the market price, which is constantly jumping around based on temporary shifts in supply and demand, but then you have the natural price. That's the actual cost of production, the wages, rent, and profit required to make the good. If a market price spikes too high, new sellers rush in to chase those profits, which increases supply and drives the price right back down. Prices are always gravitating back toward that natural price, creating this beautiful, self-correcting balance.
So, here is the absolute crucial point. The famous invisible hand isn't just a metaphor for greed or unchecked capitalism. Not at all. It is the ultimate synthesis of this entire imaginary machine we've been building. It's the miraculous mechanism where millions of people acting solely in their own self-interest unintentionally engineer a prosperous, stable, and perfectly allocated society. They cooperate to fulfill a larger design without ever even meaning to do so.
So, there it is. We've built the machine. But as you look around at the sheer complexity of our world today, massive global supply chains, tech monopolies, wildly shifting social dynamics, consider this. Is Smith's grand machine still ticking along exactly the way he envisioned it? Is the invisible hand still balancing our markets, or do we need to invent some new gears of our own? Definitely something to chew on the next time you look at the economy around you. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.